They laughed at the cowboy when he claimed the 3 Apache girls would one day be his brides, but laughter turned to silence when destiny proved them wrong. Watch till the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us where in the world are you watching from? Let's get started. The saloon roared with laughter, its smoke-choked air thick with whiskey breath and mockery. At the back table, a lone cowboy tipped his hat low, his eyes steady despite the jeers. "One day," he said, calm but certain, "I'll wed those 3 Apache girls you boast about." The outlaws howled louder, their boots pounding the floorboards. To them, the women were trophies, bound and displayed outside as spoils of conquest. But the cowboy's gaze wasn't on the laughter, nor the whiskey. It was on the horizon beyond, the swinging doors, where night stretched wide and fate waited in silence. Outside, the 3 girls sat tied to a post beneath the flickering lantern light. Their wrists were raw from rope, but their eyes carried a fire no outlaw could extinguish. Their braids were tangled from struggle, their dresses torn, yet dignity clung to them like armor. Men passed by, some gawking, some spitting, none offering mercy. But when the cowboy stepped outside, his boots crunching against the dirt, they felt something different. He did not gloat, he did not mock. His eyes softened, yet they were sharpened with a dangerous resolve that made the night stir. Youngest girl raised her chin defiantly, whispering words in her language. The cowboy couldn't fully understand. Still, he knew their meaning. "We are not broken." He tipped his hat slightly, a gesture of quiet respect. Behind him, the saloon door swung open, and the raucous laughter spilled out again, mixing with the desert wind. The cowboy leaned against a post, his hand brushing the hilt of his knife. He had not asked for this fight, nor sought glory, but honor had a way of choosing its own battlefield. When the moon climbed high, the drunken outlaws staggered from the saloon, guns slung lazily at their hips. They bragged loudly of their prize, boasting of the silver they'd claimed by selling the girls at the border. The cowboy stayed in the shadows, his breath steady, his mind sharper than steel. He counted each man, noting the twitch of their hands, the swagger of their steps. To charge now was death, but to wait too long was worse. He weighed silence like a weapon, every second stretching taut as a drawn bowstring. The night broke with a gunshot. A bottle shattered against the dirt as one outlaw fired into the sky, laughing. The girls flinched, but their eyes didn't waver. That was the moment, the spark the cowboy needed. In one motion, he pushed from the shadows, his knife flashing. In the pale light, the first rope split, fibers scattering like sparks. The girls gasped but stayed still, trusting his intent. Before the outlaws could turn, his pistol cleared its holster, the crack of thunder splitting the desert air wide open. 2 men dropped before they understood the fight had begun. The others cursed, scrambling for weapons, but whiskey slowed their hands. The cowboy moved with practiced precision, each step a dance of survival. He shoved the women behind him, shielding them with his broad frame as bullets ripped through the night. A shot grazed his sleeve, another kicked dust at his boots. But his aim stayed true. By the time the echoes faded, silence claimed the clearing, leaving only the ragged breathing of the freed and the fallen. The girls clutched one another, trembling, though not from weakness. Their hearts pounded with the shock of battle, but their spirit burned bright. The cowboy sheathed his knife, sliding his pistol back into its holster with a slow, steady breath. He turned to face them, not as savior, not as conqueror, but as man to equals. "You're free," he said simply, voice low and firm. The eldest, her eyes dark with suspicion, studied him in silence. Freedom was a word often spoken, rarely, given, but something in his tone told her he meant it with his life. The desert wind stirred, carrying away the smoke of battle. Stars stretched overhead, sharp and endless, as if bearing witness to the choice he had made. The girls stepped from the ropes that once bound them, rubbing raw wrists with hands that had known too much suffering for their years. They did not smile, but neither did they turn away. Instead, they stood beside him in the clearing. 3 shadows stitched together with his. The cowboy adjusted his hat, the silence between them saying more than any words could. Respect had crossed a boundary that night. By dawn, the outlaw camp was empty, the fire smoldering down to ash. The cowboy led his horse by the reins, the women following close, not as captives but as survivors. Each step into the rising sun marked a change none of them could yet name. Their lives had been altered, torn from cruelty and carried into an uncertain future. The cowboy did not know where the trail would end, nor did they. But as the light painted the horizon gold, he understood one truth. Respect, not possession, had tied his heart to theirs, stronger than any rope. And as they walked into the morning, the laughter of the saloon seemed far away, as if belonging to another world, a world where cruelty was cheered and honor mocked. But the desert had written a different story that night, one of blood, fire, and freedom. The cowboy glanced at the women, their faces worn but unyielding, their eyes steady on the trail ahead. He didn't speak of promises or dreams or marriage. For now, there was only survival and the silent bond born in the fire of that midnight fight. That bond would decide the rest. Weeks passed at the cowboy's quiet homestead, a small cabin pressed against the edge of wide desert plains. The land was harsh, but in its silence a kind of peace lived. The Apache girls, once prisoners of rope and cruelty, found new rhythm in its dust and wood. They fetched water, tended fire, and walked freely beneath the sun without fear of chains. At night, the crackle of burning logs filled the air, and laughter, soft, uncertain at first, returned to their voices. It was a sound the cowboy never thought he would hear again, yet treasured as if sacred. The cowboy worked the land with steady hands, his days spent mending fences and guiding cattle across dry fields. He did not command the women, nor treat them as burdens. Instead, he shared the work, showing them tools and trade, and in turn learning from them. They taught him the old ways, herbs that healed, songs that carried memory, signs written in the desert winds. Sometimes, as the fire burned low, the youngest would hum a tune from her people, and though he did not know the words, his heart understood every note as truth. One morning, the air changed. The ground trembled faintly beneath hooves, and dust swirled on the horizon. The cowboy stepped onto his porch, rifle in hand, though he kept it lowered. Out of the rising sun, riders appeared, Apache warriors, their braids flowing, their faces painted with earth. At their head rode the chief, tall and proud, his presence commanding. The women froze, their eyes wide, with recognition. Slowly they moved to the cowboy's side, not in fear, but in strength. For they were no longer captives, nor merely survivors. They were his family, though words had not yet named it. The chief dismounted, his gaze steady as stone. Silence hung heavy, the air taut as bowstring. Then, in a voice deep with age and power, he spoke. "You gave them freedom when no one else would." His words rolled like thunder, carrying weight beyond the clearing. The cowboy dipped his head, humility softening his rugged face. "No one should be bound in chains," he answered. The chief's eyes lingered on him, searching for truth. After a long pause, he nodded. "In our way, that makes you family." The words fell like blessing, reshaping everything that had come before. The women stepped forward, their eyes glistening with pride. They stood beside the cowboy, not behind him, their hands brushing his, as if claiming him before all. The eldest spoke, her voice firm though accented. "He fought for us, bled for us. He gave respect where there was none." Her sisters nodded, their braids swinging in agreement. The chief's face softened, lines of weariness giving way to solemn approval. Around him, the warriors lowered their weapons, acknowledging what their leader saw. The moment carried no jest, no laughter, only the quiet gravity of destiny being sealed. That night, the homestead glowed brighter than ever. Before, the warriors and the family shared a meal around a roaring fire, stories exchanged in broken words and gestures, but understood all the same. The cowboy listened to the chief speak of traditions and bonds, of honor and unity. When the flames crackled high, the chief placed a hand on his shoulder. "They are yours, if you are theirs," he said. The cowboy looked to the three women, their eyes reflecting the firelight, and nodded slowly. He did not see possession, he saw choice, loyalty, and love freely given. The laughter of the saloon felt far away now, almost like a bad dream. Once men had mocked him for claiming the impossible, for daring to say he would stand beside the three women they had treated as spoils. Yet here he was, not through conquest or pride, but through sacrifice and respect. The outlaws who had laughed were gone, their names swallowed by the desert. What remained was a bond stronger than any oath spoken over whiskey. The cowboy had been ridiculed, but now he was honored. What began as mockery had transformed into something eternal. As weeks folded into months, the homestead thrived. The women's laughter grew stronger, their voices carrying across the plains like birdsong. They worked as one family, not bound by the chains of cruelty, but by the threads of choice. The eldest stitched clothing, her skill unmatched. The middle tended a garden, coaxing green life from stubborn soil. The youngest kept the fire burning, her songs weaving warmth into the home. The cowboy, once a man of solitary silence, found himself smiling more often, his burdens lightened by the presence of three hearts who chose to stand beside him. Seasons changed, painting the desert in gold and fire. The cowboy would sometimes ride into town, the memory of the saloon still echoing faintly. Men glanced at him differently now, no laughter spilling from their lips. Rumors had spread of the lone rider who had cut down outlaws and carried away the Apache captives not as spoils, but as wives. Some scoffed, others whispered, but none dared to mock him openly. Respect had carved its place in their silence. And though he never flaunted his life, the cowboy carried the truth proudly. Love had been born from ridicule. On quiet nights, when the stars stretched wide and endless, the cowboy would sit on the porch, the women at his side. Together, they gazed at the horizon, where darkness met light, where laughter had once mocked him, and destiny had risen instead. He would take their hands one by one, holding them as if they were the most fragile yet powerful treasures the earth had ever shaped. In that silence, he knew the truth with certainty. He had not chosen this path, the path had chosen him. And in the end, love was the greatest victory of all.